Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So today we have a deck list that is especially good for the featured location. It's okay at counterplay no matter what, even after the featured location is gone, but I think it gets additional strength from being able to play into the raft and cap it out pretty early. And so I did not come up with this deck list. This is actually another snapper named Torikun's list. And I was running into a lot of junk decks. Junk decks very heavily punish greedy decks. Decks that need 3 or 4 spaces in a lane or in an individual location. And so I was doing something like an Exodia. I was doing a couple of different experiment style deck lists. But with how many junk decks are out there that were sending us crap with like Debris and Viper and different goblins, I felt like we needed a way to counterplay. And so that is where this list came from. This list is going to be good at clearing space if we need it from rocks, goblins with a Carnage, and then it also offers a decent amount of counterplay. With the Enchantress, you can cancel those big greedy combos. You can counter like Ronins, which are pretty prevalent on the meta right now, and just overall it feels pretty solid. And so running through the deck list really quickly. First up, we have Hood. Hood is going to be a good cheap cost card that we can drop into the raft location. It generates another 1 cost card. We have Carnage to clear it, or Killmonger to clear it from this list, or maybe sometimes we just leave the Hood in the lane and we push our power into the other 2. We have Nova. Nova in this list is going to sometimes really pop off. Sometimes it's not going to have that many targets by the time you destroy it. Other times you're going to have your Bishop, you're going to have your Mysterio tokens, you're going to have a lot of cards out on the board when Nova gets triggered, and so you're going to be able to get a lot of upside from it. And then we have Angela. So with this deck, it does lean a little bit more towards early game aggro with the transition into late game like counterplay with your Shang-Chi, Enchantress, Magik, and Captain Marvel. So with Angela, she's going to buff up and she's going to get benefit from your Mysterio play, from every card that's played in her lane. So if you do play the Hood in her lane and then you end up killing it with a Killmonger, that's going to give you an additional space to play and buff her up even further. And then we have Carnage. Carnage is going to help clear space if they run a Debris, if they run something that sends you a card on your side of the board that you don't want. Carnage is going to be able to relieve you of that downside. And then we have Mysterio. Speaking of cards that you don't want, we have Mysterio and the Mysterio tokens. Carnage is going to be able to eat and destroy one of those tokens to gain some additional power, and this offers a decent amount of kind of mind games where the opponent doesn't know exactly where your power level is, and so if you can get it within 5, that makes them sometimes have to invest more resources than they would have had to otherwise. And then this can break the interaction with Captain Marvel, but it really depends on the order that you play them in. And so we have to be very particular about where we place our real Mysterio token versus where we place Captain Marvel. And then we have Bishop. Bishop is going to be a pretty good card at attaining a decent amount of power by the end of the game. With this list and dropping a lot of our cards early, Bishop gets a lot of upside from the Mysterio play. It gets an instant +3. We also have some other cards that we can play. Usually Bishop is going to be between 6 and 8 power, which is pretty decent for a 3 cost card. And then we have Killmonger. This not only is a way to kill our 1 cost cards that we don't want, it also can kill theirs. So if they're running a bounce style list, if they're running a Deadpool deck, a Human Torch, if they are running even just a Sunspot that they let buff up over time, you can eventually drop Killmonger and take out a pretty big unit, giving yourself some upside, and you clear the units from your side that you don't want. And so Killmonger operates really, really well in this list. You can always hold him until turn 7 to drop him alongside a Shang-Chi or an Enchantress to get a lot of upside. And then we have Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is going to be a good way for us to handle high power decks. And so if they are running really large minion cards, if they're buffing up their Thor, if they have Magneto, if they drop an Infinite onto the board, or even if they use a Doc Ock and they pull into our hand, a lot of times that will target a Shang-Chi. And it's going to be able to swing a lot of those locations in our favor. And if we can drop this on turn 7 and kind of push it as a surprise, we can swing a lot of high cube games because of that. And speaking of kind of like that sneaky last turn play, we have Enchantress. Enchantress is going to be able to counter all of these strong ongoing abilities that we have in the meta right now. If you're running up against those greedy combo decks, a Patriot deck, Cerebro deck, Mr. Negative, even just a Ronin that can be a huge power push, Enchantress is going to allow us to to compete in that location by canceling out all of those strong ongoing abilities, usually making it pretty easy to sneak away and steal that location. And then we have Rescue. Rescue is a pretty decent 4-cost card. We don't usually want to drop Shang-Chi or Enchantress naturally on 4. We usually want to wait until either turn 6 or 7. And so Rescue is going to be a much more ideal turn 4 drop, and we're going to be able to play a card in that same lane on the following turn to get an additional +5. So she becomes a 9-power card, which is pretty decent for, and that is going to be pretty good for a 4-cost card. And then we have Magik. She is going to help us extend the game. Sometimes we need to drop this on 6. I know it is kind of, but sometimes we need to drop this on 6 so that we know what their late game push was. If we can have them sneak into their Apocalypse, their Infinite, their really large power cards, we can strategically place our Shang-Chi or our Enchantress, as well as like our Killmonger, to get a lot of upside from this interaction. And then finally, we have Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel in this list feels pretty good. So since we are going to be clearing locations, since we're going to be destroying cards with like an Enchantress or a Shang-Chi, or even a Killmonger late game, that opens up space for Captain Marvel to move around. And sometimes once we drop the Enchantress, all we need is just a couple more power points to be able to swing that location in our favor. Captain Marvel is going to come in really, really pivotal in making sure that we can lock down 2 locations instead of just 1. And so between the Mysterio and Captain Marvel interaction, the in-game effects will trigger from left to right. So the Mysterio token or real Mysterio on the left will trigger before the Mysterio token, Captain Marvel, or real Mysterio in the middle. Same thing with the right. And so for Captain Marvel, we want her to be dropped after Mysterio and further right than the real Mysterio token. And so if the real Mysterio token is in mid, most of the time we want to drop Captain Marvel on the far right. That way the power level from the real Mysterio will reveal before Captain Marvel tries to resolve her effect and move to figure out which lane she would win in. This is going to avoid you potentially moving Captain Marvel into a lane that you actually have your Mysterio token and pushing a little bit too much power when it was needed elsewhere. And so that is the rundown of the deck list. We are going to go ahead and jump in. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, so first up we have Octavio. In our starting hand, we don't have either of our 1-cost cards, but that's okay. Our biggest power push is going to be potentially Angela, and it gives us an extra turn to figure out if the raft location comes up, which is of course going to be really, really big for us. So let's go ahead and play Angela. Depending on what we draw into, we may play Nova into the raft next turn. We might push some power into Asgard. We just don't know exactly what it looks like just yet. All right, so I am going to go with the Nova into the raft. We want to try and cap that one out. And then we just hope for a Killmonger at some point. But they're going to have quite a bit of power with the Lady Sif discard, the Blade discard. And so here I'm going to go ahead and do Rescue. We can follow that up with a turn 5 Mysterio or a turn 5 Magik, depending on what we want to drop into. But that'll give us a pretty good power push into the raft location. They, of course, are going to win in the Asgard lane. We're just kind of letting that one go and hoping for the best. We're going to hope that our 6-cost card is better than them having additional resources in hand. And then we will be able to, as long as we don't have initiative going into either turn 6 or turn 7, depending on if the game gets extended, we will have a Shang-Chi that we're able to play to potentially overcome some of that power. And so I'm going to put the real Mysterio into the right lane. That is, of course, going to cap out this location, give Angela +2. It's going to give Rescue +5, and it's going to put a token over here that will eventually be able to Carnage if we want to. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and do the Carnage after the Mysterio play. Okay, so we get Onslaught, which we don't have any ongoing abilities, but it is a free 7-cost card. So they discard a couple of pretty good units in their Dracula, but their Morbius does get buffed up a decent amount. If they discard one more card, we will be able to use the Shang-Chi into Asgard, but I don't think that's the lane that we push for. I think if we're going to try to win a lane, we have to try to win the Raft and Fisk's Tower. They do have their Apocalypse, which would come in at, I think, 12 power. We turn second. We don't have initiative, so Shang-Chi would actually be able to target it here, and I don't think they put it into the raft location. I think they try to push it in Fisk Tower, so I think we'll be able to sneak this lane away with the Onslaught and the Shang-Chi. I don't think we need to extend the game, and so that is what we're relying on. It's a Chavez. All right, so next up we have Awesome. We are going to go ahead and throw our Nova into the far right lane. Okay, Sakar pulls into our rescue. Unfortunately, we don't have a follow-up turn to play other than Carnage, which would end up destroying it. So we're not going to be able to trigger Rescue's vulnerability, unfortunately. So they do have the follow-up to their Angela with the Mysterio, so that does buff this one up. We honestly don't know where the real Mysterio token is. Okay, oh my gosh, what a low roll. Oh... well, all right. This one looks like it is probably a lost cause. Unless we change this one with our Magik on 5, it's probably a lost cause. But let's go ahead and I think we just skip here. We skip here, we let them play some of their resources, some of their cards, just kind of play it out and play the patience game and wait. So I think I'm going to do the Angela. We're going to do Hood over here. Next turn, we will end up using a Magik, which will extend the game. On turn 6, we can do something like a Carnage, maybe a Carnage and an Enchantress. We can play around quite a bit with the cards that we have. And so they drop a Koye, which buffs all of the cards in their deck, which is okay. It's okay for us. It's not huge. It's not terrible either. So let's go ahead and change this location. That's going to allow us to destroy cards here again, thankfully. And then we'll be able to drop a Carnage, destroy that, and then we'll look at what else we need to potentially drop to push as much power as we need to be able to potentially win here. So the Ronin is kind of tough, but we also have an Enchantress for these particular situations. So we can always Enchantress that lane. We also will end up having not a huge amount of cards in our hand at the very end of the game. So I think we do a Carnage. We will then do... Mysterio will only go 2 places. It's not going to go all 3 because it's not going to wait to play the additional Mysterio tokens until after Carnage goes off. It's just something that we're going to have to play around and deal with. So I think we do the real Mysterio over here. I think we play our Demon in the left-hand side. This is going to probably be the lane that we push for. And then we can always drop a Captain Marvel, which will be able to kind of move and rotate. It just depends. And so they do cap this one out with an Iron Man. I don't know. I'm a little bit torn on which one I want to use the Enchantress on. Okay, so we can do a Bishop play, which will buff up our Angela. We can follow that up with an Enchantress, which will destroy their Ronin. Do we think that's enough power over here? If this is the real Mysterio token, that's still 5 power. We only have 13, which I guess is okay. I actually think this is okay. I think taking out the Ronin is going to use the least resources to overcome that power level. And then the Bishop play is just going to give us a little bit of extra boost into the Angela lane. But, I mean, I guess we do have the +5 Mysterio over there. I mean, so maybe it's worthwhile to push the Bishop over into Limbo in case they are trying to kind of capitalize and come up over that power level. And so if they use a Mystique to copy the Iron Man, then we're fine. And I think that's their biggest power push. But I don't think the Bishop location is going to make a difference. So the Mystique would be huge for them, but our Enchantress is in that lane, so it's going to cancel out both of those, which is going to be huge for us. We will be able to overcome whatever power they have in Limbo. We are also going to be able to overcome the power they have in Xandar. So we are going to be able to come up over. We're going to win both the left and the far right lane. We abandoned Sakar once we saw that they had the really strong Iron Man and potential for the real Mysterio token there. So it did turn out that that was the real Mysterio location. So they had a lot of power in mid. So even if we hit that with an Enchantress, overcoming that was going to be difficult. We did secure the lanes that we needed to. And so overall, what I like the most about this deck list is the flexibility. You can adjust depending on what you are running against. If you're running against the Exodia combo, you have Enchantress, which is basically going to win you the game. If you're running against like a large minion deck that pushes a lot of power, if you can turn after them, you can use Shang-Chi, which will destroy a lot of their power. And then Captain Marvel is kind of like a jack of all trades. She will move, and then you just have a decent power push across the board and a lot of flexibility. All right, so next up we have Awesome again, which is a little bit strange. I did wait a few seconds in between matching just to try and give them a little bit of time to match against somebody else, but it doesn't look like it worked. Okay. Those games happen. All right, so next up we have Max, and the first location is Nidavellir. So if they invest power there, a lot of times we can destroy the entire lane with a Shang-Chi late game because of the +5 power. You have to place cards that are 4 or more power to be able to be within the Shang-Chi range, which honestly happens a lot. So we're going to go with the Angela play into the far right lane, just in case it's the featured location. Most likely it won't be, but in case it is, this will give us some additional upside and a little bit of a heads-up advantage. So it is Kunlun, unfortunately, but I think we play our Mysterio, our real Mysterio here, and then we will follow up with a Nova into the Nidavellir lane. That will also have a Mysterio token there. But if we draw into Carnage, that's going to be a great way to destroy that lane, get the additional power. If not, the additional +5 should be enough to swing the location once we drop our Shang-Chi to wipe out whatever cards they have there. And so here I'm going to go ahead and drop Rescue in the middle location. Unless they start pushing power into Kunlun, then I think we're okay in there. I think we're okay there. I think pushing maybe Xandar or splitting our power a little bit is going to be a little bit better here. So they drop a Wong, and I don't think it's ever Wong to use Enchantress on a Wong. As soon as you see a Wong, that power potential is so huge that I don't think it's ever a bad play to just go ahead and take care of it. If they drop a Mystique following up the Wong, then we're okay. It won't copy into anything that breaks a lot of their combo. And of course, we don't know how high roll they're trying to go with their Wong, but now we may never know. Moving on. All right, so next up we have Deity, and we're going to skip turn 1. We will probably end up skipping turn 2. Luke's Bar. Is Luke's Bar beneficial for us here? We don't really have anything that benefits from being bounced, right? No. We will be able to play the Captain Marvel, and unless they have a way to push power there or change the location, we'll get a lot of upside from that interaction. So I think we're going to wait to drop our Mysterio. We will drop Bishop on 3. That will allow us to drop Mysterio, who will buff up Bishop by 3. And so I think we play Bishop into the expansion lane. We just kind of gamble on it. If we pull into something that destroys our Bishop here, that's unfortunate, but it does happen. They have the same potential play line as well. So if it pulls into a Deathlock, that's huge for us, for them in expansion, because it will destroy their lane. Okay, and so X-Mansion comes in. It doesn't quite cap. That was very unfortunate. So they flipped into an Ultron, which before it would have just filled up this lane, but because of the most recent update, it actually fills up all of their other locations, which means that their Nightcrawler doesn't have any room to move around. They are stuck with this power level in this lane. They're stuck with this power level here. Super low roll. And we actually got a Captain Marvel, so we were looking pretty good. All right, so next up we have Cheesy Hong. And they are very active in the Marvel Snap Discord. I've had a lot of conversations just that involved them, and so hopefully this ends up being a good match. And so they start off with Iceman, which hits our Killmonger, which is a little unfortunate, but I think it's okay overall. We don't have to drop our Magik now because Limbo is actually the natural second location. Let's do our Angela. I think we try to maybe compete for this location. Had they not hit our Killmonger, we would be able to destroy their Iceman. But unfortunately, we don't really have a lot of wiggle room or play around room. So I am going to drop the Widow's Bite into Murder World, just let it get destroyed. They will probably end up capping out the Raft before we do. And then they hit us with a Baron Mordo, which turns our Nova into a 6-cost card. So a lot of disruption coming out of their hand and out of that lane. And so I'm going to drop the Real Mysterio token into the Raft. They are going to have a free 6-cost card, but we do have a little bit of an advantage. We will be able to potentially drop Shang-Chi, Enchantress if it turns out that it's a really good ongoing ability. And then depending on what the rest of their deck list is, so they hit us with a Rock Slide for some even more disruption. Every single one of the cards they've sent us so far has disrupted us in some way, shape, or form. So absolutely miserable to play against. And I love it. I love every second of it. So here I am going to go ahead and play the Hood, and it feels bad, but I am going to drop Killmonger as well. That will destroy their Iceman here, but it also kills our Hood. We can double buff Angela. That makes this lane pretty tough for them to come up over. The Ronin comes down, but we don't have a lot of cards left in our hand. Actually, we have 6. That's quite a few. We have Enchantress that will be able to address the elephant in the room of the Ronin, so that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and drop Captain Marvel. Do we drop Captain Marvel here? Do we drop her into Murder World and then drop a demon token here? Actually, maybe I do the demon token here. We leave this one open for like the potential crossplay, which I think I like. So maybe the 10 power in Limbo would be enough. Let's go ahead and see what they play here. So the Mystique comes down to copy the Ronin. So we do have to make a choice between if we want to compete for Limbo, or if we want to compete for Murder World. And so with the Captain Marvel, I think we just abandon the Murder World lane. That means we want to lock in our Enchantress here. And then because of the way that our cards have been hit, we actually aren't able to drop anything else. And so we have to just hope that the power level here is enough, or the power level after Captain Marvel moves is enough. We have a lot riding on the Mysterio, Captain Marvel, and just the Enchantress interaction here. So they do turn first, so if they drop another ongoing card, that's going to be just fine. So they have 2 power. We do overcome their power in the Limbo lane because we're going to be able to cancel out the Ronin. He's absolutely huge right now, so you need some way to counteract it. Our Mysterios do turn. Our Captain Marvel is able to move over into the far left lane. Because of the order of operations, the Mysterio tokens start turning first from left to right, and then Captain Marvel will try to trigger. Whereas if the real Mysterio was here and Captain Marvel was here, it would try to resolve her after the game ends effect before the Mysterio token turned. Using Mysterio with Captain Marvel can be tricky, but if you can get it in the right order, and if you get a little bit lucky in that placement, then you can get some pretty decent upside. And so we are able to swing the raft location by just 2, just barely. I am curious what 6 cost card they got. Maybe they ended up getting an Arnim Zola, maybe they got an Infinite, but they weren't able to skip a turn. Maybe they got a Destroyer, which of course they wouldn't want to drop. But that is the first time that we have matched up, but that was a very, very good game. It was very close all the way up until the very last card resolution. All right, so next up we have Anborn. And the first location is the big house, so we're not going to be able to play 4, 5, or 6 cost cards there. That means our Rescue, our Enchantress, our Shang-Chi are completely out. We do have the upside of being able to drop our Captain Marvel, and she can move over there of her own volition. But I think we drop our Angela as the first card into the raft. We see what kind of flood mechanic they have, so they have the Scorpion as well. I do imagine that they will beat us to capping out the raft location, but we can hope, right? Ooh, District X is not kind. So let's go ahead and play the Lizard and Nova. Let's see if they cap out this location. I bet they do this turn, yeah, unfortunately. So they get a lot of upside here out of that interaction. They have Sunspot that's going to be able to grow over time. Just a very, very difficult lane for us. And so right now we are tied, but once we drop another card, it's just going to be a bad deal. So we could do a Namor into District X. The only thing we can drop into the big house right now is Carnage because we pushed so much power here. I don't think it's ever worth it to use Carnage here, but I mean, we'll just have to play. It's a District X game, so it is absolutely random. These games, unless you just have your perfect combo already in hand, it just comes down to who can play on their feet better. Okay, and so the Namor comes down. Their Sunspot does start getting buffed up, so maybe we can get... No, never mind. We don't have a Shang-Chi. I don't know why I was thinking we still had a Shang-Chi play. So, never mind. We're going to drop our Carnage and our Iceman into the big house. And then we're going to hope for something else that might be able to push us up over that ledge or that edge. So they pass again with their Sunspot, which is kind of scary. Actually, it's very, very scary. We know that if they drop an Infinite here, we can't compete over into the District X lane. Dropping this is a 10 power play. And so that... Ooh... I think we lose this one, but I do want to see it play out. It is only 1 additional cube. The Jane Foster into the Angela play will be 10 power. That'll push us up to 18. If they drop a 6 cost card, which it depends on if this was their Infinite that they pulled from the raft or not. So they drop 2 cards over in District X. Hopefully one is a natural 6 cost card and one is Infinite. That would mean that we would win the left and the... Oh, that is beautiful. So the Infinite was created by District X, and so that one they did pay the 6 cost for. The leader play was more of a Hail Mary, hoping that we push something maybe here or here to just make sure that they won. Oh my gosh. It was the free card from the raft, and we got so incredibly lucky. That was very close, Anborn. Very, very close. All right, so next up we have J Big. And I'm going to start off by dropping our Hood. Next turn we will probably do our Nova. And then we see what we draw into after that. We could potentially drop both the Nova and the Demon if we really wanted the raft location to be ours. Ooh, that opens up some possibility, some play possibility. So now we can do Nova and Demon still to finish capping out the location on turn 2. Depends on what we think they have. I think we go with that. I think the 6 power Demon that we're going to basically donate or just sacrifice. I think the 6 cost card, it has a better or higher potential impact for us. So we draw into a Spectrum. We have no ongoing cards. Well, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. I kind of wish we would have missed that one. So let's go ahead and play our Bishop. We're going to wait a couple of turns. We will have a Killmonger that we can play to destroy all of the board so far. As long as they don't drop an armor somewhere. But if they do, I think it's fine. Okay, so they use a Polaris, which pulls over the Nova, but that's fine. We are going to kill all of those cards anyways, which is kind of strange, right? That they pulled a card over. So if we do an Angela and a Mysterio, that's going to cap out this location and this location temporarily. We will be able to clear most of it with the Nova, but I do like the fact that we'll have a lot of the Mysterio tokens out on the board. We get the Bishop buff, so unless they send us some kind of junk here, I think we get a pretty good upside. We will only be able to drop Killmonger on 5 though, which is the only downside. And so we have the Angela that's going to get buffed up from the Mysterio. We have the Bishop that's going to buff up 3 times from all 3 Mysterios. They have an Angela, Scorpion, which is okay. We played most of our cards. We don't get hit by too many there. We do have the Bifrost Shift, but we're going to be able to clear a lot of their lane and a lot of ours in the process. So let's go with the Killmonger that's going to destroy so many cards across the board, and will leave us open to being able to do like a Captain Marvel and a Spectrum, an Enchantress and a Spectrum on turn 6 to try to push for the win. Okay, and so they just do a Doc Ock, but that's not going to be able to pull into anything because we did play a card there. And so we do clear a lot of space here, a large amount of space, such a huge amount of space. We get a lot of triggers from our Nova, which is good. We can extend the game with a Magik if we wanted to, but do we want to? I don't know that we want to. I think we do something like a Captain Marvel and a Spectrum into mid. That will allow Captain Marvel to move over. It buffs up our Angela. It triggers twice on Bishop. I'm actually going to play the Spectrum into the far left lane. We don't get any triggers with the ongoing. It won't buff up Angela as much, but we do have the real Mysterio in this lane. So it gives Captain Marvel a chance to try to win in the raft location. And so they snapped back. We have an 8 power game here. Let's go ahead and see what they end up dropping. It may be a Magik play here. If so, that's fine. I think that's totally fine if they have a Magik play. No, it's a Dr. Doom, which does push some decent power to the left and the right. Our Captain Marvel will be able to move over into the Bifrost to be able to swing that location. We keep the win in Central Park because the real Mysterio token was there, and Captain Marvel locks down the secondary lane. And so with that game, that big 8 cube game, we had a lot of retreats, a lot of like slow, small cube games, but with that one, I am going to go ahead and end the video. Overall, the deck list feels pretty good, especially with the raft location as being featured. Once it's gone, we may want to shift over into a couple of other ideas that I have. But overall, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.